What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin coming to you from the Big Blue Nation once again. And today, I was going to talk to you about the Croton plant. Now, I'm sure that's really the only name you've probably ever heard it called, the Croton, the Croton, the Crouton, but I've also heard it called the Garden Croton and the Variegated Croton. But its scientific name is Codiaeum variegatum. It is a tropical plant. It's from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Australia, but it's a very unique plant. It's probably one of the most difficult plants that I've ever messed with, and I think it's really funny too because a lot of people, they feel one way or the other. You either love this plant for its stunning variegation and its beautiful leaf colors, or you hate it because it drops leaves quicker than anything else I've ever seen in my life. But I'm here today to kind of talk a little bit about that to kind of help you out in case you do have this plant, because it can be frustrating. Now, I know it's fall, so a lot of you have seen this plant all over the stores. And you think, wow, that's really beautiful. It's got greens and yellows and pinks and kind of reds and different color hues and everything else. It's a really strikingly beautiful plant. But unless you know what you're doing, it is a very hard plant to take care of. I mean, this plant drops leaves quicker than I go through money, so it can be very difficult. And that's really only just because of where it comes from. Like I said, it is a tropical plant, so it needs a good amount of light. In fact, if your plant looks more green than yellow or red or any other color, that means your plant's not getting enough light, and it will start to kind of turn green so that it can better use more chlorophyll and absorb light better. But if it's getting plenty of light, it will get its beautiful colors and show all these different patterns and just really look stunning like the plant is supposed to look. So I would say medium to bright indirect light is perfect for this plant. I mean, if you're getting this plant 1 to 2 to 3 or 4 hours of direct sunlight a day, it should be fine. But like I said, if it's turning green, you're not giving it enough light. It can pretty much survive in any window except the north. I think north is not enough light for it to survive. I've got mine kind of sitting in like the southwest. It gets ample sunlight in the afternoon, in the morning not so much, and he seems to be doing fine there. So make sure he's getting at least 2 or 3 hours of direct sunlight a day, and then bright sunlight the rest of the day. And water. You really only should water this guy whenever the about top half or inch of the soil is dry. So stick your finger down in there, and if you see a bunch of like mud and muck and granules and sediment all over your finger, it's not time to water. Give it a couple of days, maybe even a week. But check it periodically. Stick your finger down in there, and once you go to pull it back up and you feel no moisture and you see nothing really stuck to your finger, it's time to give him some water. So in the spring and summer, I probably will water him depending on how hot it gets. It could get water about every day, but this is mainly an outdoor plant for a lot of people, but a lot of people do keep it indoors. So indoors in the summertime, you're probably not gonna dry the plant out as much, so you won't need to water it as often. But in the fall and winter, you will have to decrease the water drastically. This plant will kind of go into a resting mode, and it won't really require as much water. Humidity is very important for this plant. You definitely should use a humidifier or a pebble tray, and all you need to do for a pebble tray is to just get a longer tray. It has some walls on the side that can actually hold the water in, lay some pebbles all over it, and then fill it up with water. Now, you don't want the plant to make contact with the water. You want it to actually just sit on top of the pebbles, so as the water evaporates, it'll go kind of up through the leaves and moisten the plant. Now, as I was saying, you don't want the pot where it's actually able to suck in water to make contact with that water, or you'll probably end up just drowning your roots. But indoors, you're going to at least need about 40% humidity. Really, 45 to 50% humidity is probably perfect, but this guy doesn't need as much as maybe like a prayer plant or some of your other orchids, but it kind of needs a good amount of humidity. Like I said, not as much as like an orchid would need or anything like that, but I use a humidifier with mine, and it seems to have helped. Now, I believe this is my third one of these plants that I've had. The first two died, and that's just because I didn't give the first one a whole bunch of light, so the leaves were dropping. The second one, I didn't give enough water, so the leaves were dropping. But I think third time's gonna be the charm, so wish me luck. Soil. You definitely want something that's quick draining. I'm gonna use my concoction that does have a good amount of sand in it, but something that's made for cacti succulents would really work well. You want something that's going to be pretty rich in nutrients, so that it will be able to feed the plant for a while, but you definitely want it to be able to let the excess water run free. Now, you can use the saucer to catch some of the excess water, but you don't want to keep the roots saturated too long. So water it enough to maybe where a little bit comes out the bottom, and then the plant can just suck that back up. But if you've got an inch, 2 or 3 inches of water in there, drain most of it out, because before it can process all that, it's actually going to die of root rot. Now, these leaves are a magnet for dust and dirt, especially the ones with the larger leaves. They collect dirt like it's nobody's business. So do your plant a favor and kind of wipe it down. What I usually do is take distilled water and do about 3 parts water to 1 part lemon juice, and then I soak a washcloth down in there, soak it up, and then wipe the leaves down on both sides, and it'll retain a nice shine and actually not kind of smother out the stomata and let the plant actually breathe. Temperature. This guy is tropical, so he does like really hot weather, kind of hot and humid, just like we kind of like it on the hot side. I know a lot of us don't like a whole bunch of humidity, but as far as temperature goes, we pretty much share the same kind of opinion on temperature. I think if it's going to be hotter than about 90, 95 to 100, you want to make sure your plant does, if it's outside, have some kind of protection from the sun in the hotter part of the day. And if it gets down to about 55 to 50, I would actually bring your plant indoors and make sure it's able to be protected from the cold, and it will not survive frost. This guy is tropical, so make sure you do not leave it outside whenever the brisk autumn air comes a-calling, because you can kill your plant. A little disclaimer, this guy is extremely toxic. The roots, the leaves, the stems, the seeds, it is all very, very toxic. So be very careful. Now, this plant isn't really toxic unless it's ingested. So if you have a kid, especially a young, curious one, I wouldn't even keep the plant, just because, like I said, they do drop leaves relatively easily. And if somebody were to walk by and pick it up curiously, just kind of nibble on it, it may end up killing your cat, your dog, or anything else. So that being said, I have one, and I have an indoor cat and an indoor dog. I kind of keep mine up a little bit so that they're not able to come by and nibble on it. But anytime you do handle the leaves and touch all over it, and you repot and you trim your roots up, I would wash your hands and wear gloves. It has been known to actually cause an eczema in some people, so it can irritate the skin pretty well, and it's actually been suspected as a carcinogen, meaning that it actually can cause cancer. Now, that's not for sure yet, so we don't know, but I wouldn't take the chance. You don't want to get to be about 40, 50, 60 years old and find out that one of your best friends has secretly been giving you cancer or anything like that. So just be cautious. Use preventative measures. Like I said, wash your hands and wear gloves. Pick the leaves up, throw them away. Make sure no squirrels or anything else like that might find it. I don't think that they're really drawn to anything like that, but you never know. So just be careful with that. Again, if your plant is getting kind of tall and lanky and you don't really like that, anywhere that you kind of see new growth on a stem, you can take your thumb or pruning shears and just kind of pinch about 1 inch to ½ an inch off, and that will actually cause the plant to start bushing out a little bit more. Pinching it off is an actual term. So like I said, just kind of pinch it back, and instead of getting tall and lanky, the tree will actually kind of bush out and get a little bit wider. Propagation. This plant can be propagated by cuttings and air layering. Seeds, you can also propagate with seeds as well. Pests. Now, I really wanted to get this plant at Walmart. They had the larger ones, but they had marked them all down and they were all crowded on this shelf, and you could tell that their leaves were dropping a whole lot too. And I picked it up and I could see a bunch of little white dots that were kind of moving around on the soil. Always, always, always make sure you look at your plant and kind of check it out to make sure you don't see anything hanging off, any pest, any kind of disease. You don't want to see a whole bunch of brown tips, discolored leaves, meaning brown or black, or any kind of holes in the leaves. That might mean that something's kind of been munching on it. And check down in the pot as well, because you'll see a lot of leaves in there, but it might look like it's full. Just kind of move your finger around in there, and if they look like they're moving a whole lot, pick them up and see. If they're coming off really easily, I wouldn't buy that plant. Now, they do like to drop leaves pretty easily, but if it's doing a whole lot, something's wrong. So don't get that plant. And blow down around in there, because I couldn't tell if those little white dots were actually moving, but once the air hit them, you could see them kind of scurry around. So don't buy anything that you see anything that might look like a bug, because you'd rather be safe than sorry. I know spider mites can be really bad with the crotons, and again, you can kind of tell if you see a lot of filaments on the leaves. Spider mites are a little hard to detect by the naked eye. So if you do see those, take the plant out immediately, especially if it's in any kind of paper or anything to make the plant like more presentable. You'll want to throw that away in a trash can outside. If you throw it away indoors, the pests can crawl up the trash can and out and get to other plants in your house as well. Any of the loose leaves that are on the plant, you want to kind of throw them away. And until you know that there's nothing on the plant, I would throw and discard them outside. And again, as I was saying, you want to take your plant out and use the garden hose and kind of hose it off. And that'll knock any kind of spider mites off the plant. Check in a couple days. If you still see some more filaments on the leaves, take some isopropyl alcohol and apply it to a washcloth and just wipe the leaves down on both sides, down around the stems as best you can, and may take a time or two of just kind of hosing it off and applying alcohol, but that really should kind of beat these spider mites. Aphids are really bad if the soil is always really soggy, because you know these guys like their humidity. So if your soil is fairly wet, you may get bugs that like to kind of burrow down in the soil and lay more eggs. Again, for that I always use gnat nix. It's just a substance that you can apply to the top of the soil about an inch or two deep, and it'll kill anything that comes in contact with the gnat nix by puncturing the exoskeleton and killing the pest. And again, if anything is hatched and it comes to the soil surface, then as soon as it makes contact with the gnat nix, it'll kill any of the larvae or anything like that. So gnat nix works really well, especially if you have a plant that you've set outside all summer and you want to bring it back in for the winter time and you're not sure if anything's down in the soil. Again, better safe than sorry, because it will kill it. That's the only thing that I've really experienced in the way of pest with this guy. Other than that though, I would say repotting. The crotons, they don't really like to be root bound too bad. So if you see roots kind of coming out of the pot or through the drainage holes in the bottom, or you see a whole lot of slowed growth, it's probably time to go ahead and repot your croton. And that's really easy. You just want to grab your pot, if you're able to, and kind of squeeze it to loosen up the soil, pull the plant out, and use a bigger pot. So this looks like it's about a 6-inch pot. So the next I would go to either 8 or 10 inches. And then again, I would use any kind of soil that's quick draining and had a lot of nutrients in it. Fox Farm, Miracle Grow are all very good substrates to use because they will feed your plants and actually get rid of the water relatively easily. And again, I always use like a little saucer under him just to kind of hold some excess water, but not a whole bunch. Now, the main reason I was drawn to this guy, aside from the striking colors and everything, is this plant actually can get fairly large. I think indoors it can reach up to 10 feet. I mean, all the conditions have to be met just right, but they can get fairly large indoors and they'll actually look like a tree. They'll have a nice kind of barkish tint or whatever to the stems, and the leaves with that and the orange or whatever, especially if you're using a terracotta pot, it looks really good. And as I said, I always like large plants, and this guy can actually be a large indoor plant, so that's mainly what brought me to him. And as I said, I've always had the worst luck with this guy. Next, hopefully I'll do an update video on this guy and I'll probably go ahead and transplant him, but I wanted to go ahead, since he's looking pretty good right now, and give you a little update on him and tell you a little bit about it, because I know a lot of people have had a bunch of problems with this. As I said, always, this guy is really kind of a diva, so I wanted to go over a little bit, and I hope this video has helped you all to realize what these plants need. They need really bright kind of indirect light, high humidity, and fertilizers. These guys don't have to be fed a whole lot, but a typical NPK solution of 10-10-10 usually works really well. They are foliage plants, so they really rely on their leaves, so they really do like nitrogen. If you could find one that's maybe a 20-10-10, would really kind of be perfect for your croton. But as I said, they don't really require a whole lot in the way of feeding, but like I said, if you're going to transplant them and you're going to use new kind of purchased substrate, I would hold off on that, because like the Miracle Grow, they can feed these guys for about 6 months after repotting. Well guys, that's really all I know about this plant. Like I said, I hope this video does help you out and answer some of these age-old questions that I know this really popular houseplant has given a bunch of you. It can be hard, but it is very worth it. As I said, it is a toxic plant. The seeds and everything are toxic, so just kind of keep it up high and hope for the best. And like I said, if you have any kind of pets or children or anything that's known to put things in their mouth, I just wouldn't keep it. Guys, if you have any questions or concerns, make sure you leave me a comment and I'll do my best to get back to those. If you haven't already done it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. You guys have a good one. Take it easy, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.